Alright folks, it's mid-September and that means it's time to get back to work. Summer fun is over and the first order of business is getting the engine started. Hello there and welcome to Travels with Geordie. My name is Peter and this good-looking fellow here is Geordie, and we live together on a classic wooden motor cruiser in Victoria, British Columbia, all the while fixing it up for some pretty extensive cruising. If that's the sort of thing you might be interested in, why don't you consider sticking around and subscribing? We'd love to have you. All right, Pop, let's go. Yes, puppy boy. Well, hey there, if you'd like your very own Travels with Geordie t-shirt, just stick around to the end of the episode and we'll show you how you can win one. Okay, so for those of you who aren't aware, I repowered both the boats I'm responsible for, MV Geordie here and MV Zephyrus down the dock last year, with used Perkins 4-cylinder engines, taking out the Perkins 6 cylinders that were in there that were both in pretty shabby shape. We got the Zephyrus running, and as you've been following along, it's running great and we've been cruising all summer. MV Geordie, I haven't even started the engine yet, and I'll get into the details why. But before we get into that, I should really clarify what getting back to work really means. What it really means is getting back down in the forecastle and doing my day job and earning a living. For those of you who've been following along, I've been kind of on the go since April. Big road trip across the country with my daughter, cruising, playing, fun, more cruising, boat shows, music festivals, etc. I've goofed off, and as a result, I need to get back to work and earn a little money. But in the meantime, on a day like this, I do want to keep advancing the boat and keeping good content for you folks. And so that's why I'm going to get down and get this engine started today, or soon, or try. Getting the engine started, some of you are saying, Peter, that's about the last thing you do right now. This boat needs a lot of attention and it's the end of the season. I should be outside sanding and varnishing and fixing leaks and really doing important stuff. But here's the problem. I'm kind of feeling a bit blue about the boat, to tell you the truth. I've been cruising all summer on my friend's boat, MV Zephyrus, and it's great. It's just a joy to have a working boat. And I'm sitting on a barge. Yeah, a barge. The engine doesn't run. It's not really close to pushing the boat around. I don't even have a helm. I can't steer this thing. There's no wiring. It's a floating barge. Now, it's a really pretty floating barge and I'm enjoying working on it tremendously. But as I said, sitting in this chair about 8 months ago, I've been kind of goofing off and doing the fun stuff. The main reason for that is the not fun stuff is incredibly expensive, and for most of it I need to haul out. Not something I can do right now. So I need to get the boat to the point where I feel it's a functional boat again. I'm going to get it started today or tomorrow maybe. Doesn't mean it runs. There are some complications to that and we'll get into that. And I certainly can't steer it yet because I don't have a helm. But I just need to know that the boat is actually a boat, and within, a week or two, I could actually steam out of here if I had to. So let's dive right in. Okay, so this bilge is a hellhole. For those of you who have been down here with me before, you'll know. And it's gotten worse since then because it's been a repository of all the extra bits of engines and cables and wires and hoses and junk that seem to be surrounding the life of a boat. Let's get to it. Well, there she is in all her glory. For those of you who remember, I basically plunked this in just over a year ago and left it. I've done nothing to it. It's basically stored in here. But as I said, if I don't make it go, I can't bear to just leave it like that. So we're going to do this in multiple stages. As you can see, there's no manifolds on it, there's no header tank, there's no starter, there's certainly no wiring hoses, etc. It needs a lot of stuff to run. But it doesn't need a lot of stuff to start. So when I do something like this, I do it in stages. I say to myself, okay, well, how much equity do we want to put into something that may never go? And in fact, I should tell you something about this engine. It may be rubbish. Get into that later. So I'm just going to put enough equipment on it that I can get it started. And then if it starts, then we add more stuff to see if I can bring it up to temperature. If I can bring it up to temperature, we can get a better idea of the quality of the exhaust, what happens to the oil, things like that. So let's just tidy up a bit first, because there's all this freaking junk in here. Okay, folks, here she is, slightly tidied up in the little big bilge of despair. I'll be honest with you, last time I was down here I wasn't in the best of moods, and I suppose I'm not in that much better a mood today, but having you folks with me is making a huge difference. There's a lot of deficits to deal with down here. For those of you who followed along with the installation of this engine, you know that there's been a lot of the floors, which are the main beams that cross across longitudinally of the boat, have been cut out to accommodate the previous engine. Some of the frames have even been notched. The engine beds have been seriously chopped up, and I added to that to get this engine in, although I didn't actually make it any worse than it was. It's just a mess. It's not a tidy install by any means, but it does fit. It fits under the floor. It fits above the bilge to a certain degree, so it should be able to work. I'm just not having fun. That's all, and I like having fun. I'm an instant gratification type of guy. I hate to admit it. Okay, so let's do a little tour for those of you who haven't been here. Here's the motor. It's a Perkins 4236 4-cylinder diesel. Very reliable, very standard. There are millions of these out there, and frankly, if they're looked after, they probably run forever. Not real high tech, not really efficient, but reasonably easy to maintain and get parts for. So it was a happy choice to find a pair of these to put in these boats. Okay, let's do the rest of the tour. Starting starboard side forward, I don't know if you can see it in this light. The only battery I have aboard right now is this ancient old 8D that's out of MV Zephyrus. I don't know if it's got enough oomph to crank the engine, but all my batteries ended up in Zephyrus for cruising, and I'm very happy about that, no problem. Here, the remainder of the battery box. This battery box is empty. Starboard side fuel tank. My best guess, it's about 85 gallons. It's welded aluminum. It seems to be in great shape. No evidence of leakage. Super happy about that. Further back, a bunch of mess of fuel valving, stuff like that we'll get into pretty soon. A BorgWarner Velvet Drive 71 series. Now, there are two major series of the BorgWarner Velvet Drive, very popular transmission, 71 and 72. 72 being for higher horsepower engines. This transmission came on this engine. Some people might say that the 71 isn't enough transmission, but it came with it. It's staying on there for now. Not going to worry about it. I'm using the original mounts. These big mounts were here for the old 72 that was in here with the old Perkins 6. Okay, further around the corner, underneath you can see the port side fuel tank. From what I can tell, about 60-65 gallons. Again, it's in great shape, doesn't seem to be leaking at all. This is the old exhaust, a hand-brewed collection of plumbing fittings and pipe and all that. And it goes back underneath, under my bed, to a massive old cast iron muffler, which is great because it doesn't leak and it's super quiet. If I get this started in the next couple of days, I'm going to have to plumb into that. In other words, connect the exhaust to it. Not looking forward to it. It's going to be a pain in the butt. It'll have to be done all underneath that section. I'm not doing it till the engine starts, which means if this engine starts, it'll be spewing exhaust out into here for 1 or 2 or 5 seconds. Not going to worry about it too much. Okay, further forward than that, a bunch of toolboxes or totes stainless steel people have put in over the years, just a pile of junk, an old header tank. This is just junk, all of which will come out. But in the meantime, it's reasonable storage for a bunch of stuff. Okay, you've had the tour. What are we going to do? First order of business, I'm going to crank it. So I'm going to take one of my vast assortment of starter motors, 2 more over there, bolt it on, and see if it'll even spin. Well, I know it'll spin because the starter motor, one of these 3, is likely to work. The only problem with that, 2 problems with that, is one, it might start because there's fuel in the injection pump and in the fuel system. Certainly the secondary fuel filter will have some fuel in it still. And if you followed along, the previous engine I put in, MV Zephyrus, started the first crank after this sort of disassembly. Blah. The other thing is, there's no oil filter set up on it right now, so it will spew oil out. So that I got to deal with for sure. I can't even risk cranking it 1/2 a turn until I put something on that, which is where the fuel filter goes, and oil filter and oil filter adapter and cooler and all that kind of stuff. So I got to put something on there to make sure it doesn't leak. Then before I do that, I got to put some oil in it. Before I do that, I got to take out whatever gun of gunge is in there out. There's a possibility that this engine has water in it. More of that when we get to that. So let me start tinkering and I'll bring you up to speed with what we're at. You don't need to watch me bolt on oil filters. Alright, so the first order of business, let's see what's in it for oil. As I said, it's possible that there's water in this engine sump. That's due to a story that the seller told me, and the fact that I have to admit my bilge pump failed at least once in the period of time this engine was in here and the water was up. How high? I don't know. So let's see what we get out of here. Well, based on my experience with the other identical pump on the other engine, which primed beautifully if there was any oil at all in the engine, I'm going to say this engine is bone dry. The way to confirm that, of course, is to put a little oil in it. But let's not do that until we've dealt with the oil filter situation. Okay, by far the simplest approach would be to use the standard oil filter adapter that just bolts right on the side of the engine. One gasket, 2 bolts, and a spin-on oil filter, and you're done. The only problem is it points down, and it would have terrible clearance issues to the engine beds, and in fact I think the engine needs to come to starboard a little bit anyway, so when it's easy, it's just too easy. Now, it'd be neat if this could go on upside down, but I don't believe the ports are symmetrical. Well, I can guarantee they're not, so that's not an option. I have a few other options, though. Actually, I'm not going to bore you at all with the other options because I'm not going to do them. So what I'm going to do is use the original, excuse me while I climb over all this, heat exchanger and oil filter and cooler adapter, although it's just a canister type, but at least it'll get me going and I'll be able to try starting the engine. The heat exchanger leaks. The canister type oil filter is pretty old tech. It's not what I would do in the end, but it'll get me to the next stage. Alright then, this has been about the most miserable chunk of mechanicking I've ever done. I did manage to get that oil filter adapter on there after much more hacking of the engine beds and modification of the engine mounts. It's unserviceable, it won't be permanent, it can't be left like that. I've connected up the supply side of the fuel, the return side of the fuel. I've topped it up with oil. I've connected up some pretty heavy duty starter batteries, and I'm going to just give it a quick crank. No manifolds on. I'm going to crank it with the shut-off lever engaged so that there's no chance it'll start, because I want to pre-lube the engine a little bit before I even try to start it. Not that it's going to start, but I sure don't want it to start with no oil in it for almost a year and a half. Okay then, so I'm going to crank it a bit, make sure I get oil pressure. I'm going to hold the shut-off lever closed or open, or whichever way you want to look at this. In other words, in the shut-off position, so the engine will not start as I do this, because I'd really rather it didn't start until it's got some oil pressure built up. So let's go. Alright, well, it's definitely built up pressure. I think it's time to put manifolds on. Alright, okay, so I've dressed up the flanges of this exhaust manifold now. On a diesel engine, the exhaust manifold is cooled. So basically, raw water that cools through the engine system goes through the manifold and cools the manifold and then goes out in the exhaust. You boaties know that. This one is shot, completely finished. The inlet here is rusted out. It's all rusted out inside. There is basically the division between the exhaust chamber and the water chamber has had it. So I cannot possibly go cruising or use this manifold. This is only just to test start it. And what's painful about that is I'm going to use genuine gaskets because why not? Let's just at least bolt it up as well as we possibly can. I can't leave a dry flange. Bloody miserable. And the intake, which is a bit tricky because it goes down. Gotta have pretty stretchy arms. British engineers, what were they thinking? Okay, well, with the manifolds on, let's have another stab at starting it. I'm not entirely confident, but we'll see. I'm going to keep my hand on the kill switch. It runs! I gotta say, these Perkins are pretty freaking awesome. But that's about as much as I want to run it without running the exhaust out of the boat somewhere. Okay, wow. Wow. Yeah. Well, that's cheered me up. Not that the rest of this is going well, but it still cheered me up. Okay then, so getting the engine started was a real perk. I'm feeling a lot better. I was going to carry on and connect up the exhaust, and I would have had to get at least the cooling water on the engine working to be able to bring the engine up to temperature to actually learn anything new. But the prospect of spending the afternoon back down in the bilge, struggling with all of that, just isn't what I'm looking for right now. I need some better instant gratification, so I'm going to cook. And I'm going to put you through all of it. And in fact, that instant gratification, this is about the least instant gratifying thing you can possibly cook, and it's going to be French onion soup. Really awesome French onion soup. Stick around. Okay, so I don't know if French onion soup sounds exotic or anything, but you know, it really isn't. It's about the simplest thing that tastes really good that you can make. There's really only one key technique to it, and that's caramelizing the onions. And you can't rush it. It's going to take an hour, probably, to caramelize this many onions. Don't worry, we'll cut through it all. So anyway, it begins with an endless amount of chopping. So let's get on with that. I know the French would say, leave on the root when you're chopping so that it holds it all together. I'm not a chef, I just am a hack. So I take off both ends. It seems to make it a lot easier to get the outer layers off. I just basically put a little slice in it, and then I have a place I can take it apart. Again, I have no idea if this is anything resembling a proper technique, but it works for me. Yeah, I'm starting to tear up, haven't even started chopping yet. Here we go. So as I don't have a lot of place to put all these chopped onions, I'm going to put them straight in the pan, which I'm going to be heating up so we can start getting to caramelize these. Now, first thing goes in here, obviously, is a schwack. And I mean a solid schwack of butter. Now, some of you might call that a little obscene, but this is a lot of onion. Okay, so let's get chopping. I know that chopping onions in the French way is a tradition, and I'm not going to claim I have any real understanding of how to do it. Basically, I chop them like that. And by the time they end up in the pan, they're just fine. How's that butter doing? Coming along nicely. Alright, I can cool that down a little bit because, of course, this is a very gradual process. Goes up after. Now I'm having some good friends over for dinner this evening. One of them is from France. So when I told her I was making French onion soup, I really wonder if she just rolled her eyes. Hopefully, I won't embarrass myself too much. But I've made this quite a few times, and whatever my version of French onion soup is, it's tasty. Okay, now, the endless wait. As I said, there's really only one really crucial step to making great French onion soup, and that's getting the onions caramelized enough. Onions are a magical vegetable. On their own like this, they're pretty yummy on a burger or somewhere else, but you get these puppies just to that right stage where they basically turn into strings of beautiful sugar. I need a fork to dig all these out of there. Anyway, sweet, yummy, flavorful, buttery, if you put enough butter in. Goodness. Now it's going to take forever to get to that. I think, as I mentioned, probably a good hour, because I caramelize very, very slowly. And that requires a degree of patience. Patience. Some of this will be going in later, so might as well see if it's any good. Again, for cooking wine, something cheap. Now, I'll say it now because you'll already be wondering. French onion soup is almost always made with white wine. I'm sorry, I don't like white wine. I like red wine. I like bold, full, rich flavors. So what I'm doing now is just making sure that all those little discs of onions, which are basically made up of lots of slivers of the basic layers, come apart. So in time, they'll all caramelize independently. Now, you have an hour to do this, but the more you get done up front, the more uniformly these will cook. An hour. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so we'll see you in a bit. Okay, folks, so it's been about half an hour. Not much to do, so just sort of keep turning and turning and turning. A great chat with some friends here at the marina through the window here. One of the things I love about this boat and boats like it is that I'm standing, the sole of this cabin is almost level with the dock outside. So it's really lovely to just be here, and as people come by, we can chat, you can easily have a conversation. It's like sitting on a porch. I just love it. I just love it. I guess I'm just saying how much I love this boat and this life. So, nothing much to talk about here. Lots of wine. I'm in good shape. Cheers. I think I mentioned that I've invited some friends from down the dock, one of whom is from France. And when she heard I was making French onion soup, she said, how about I make the baguette? This is a locally made, fresh French baguette. So excited! Now we're coming along, probably around 45 minutes now. Starting to get pretty golden, but we still got a ways to go. Now that we're getting close, you got to make sure you keep the temperature down low enough that it doesn't start to burn, because there is less and less moisture in these onions, and it's really easy for this to start to burn if you're not careful. So you want to just keep the sound about the same level of simmering. And I'm going to say we're there. Truth is, this is just shy of 2 hours. 2 hours! But, I mean, come on! I mean, is that looking good? Oh, yes it is. Yes it is. Okay, so, next thing we'll do, we'll deglaze a little bit with a little wine. And when I say a little, I just mean some. And that'll allow me to clean up all the yummy little sticky stuff that's on the bottom of the pan, as well as on the side of the pan. I want all that yummy flavor. Don't waste a drop. Okay, I'm going to turn the heat off temporarily because we're going to switch to a saucepan because it's going to simmer in here forever. So let me just run that in there. We'll all listen to the plane fly overhead. And we're going to add the stock and some water. Now this is a beef stock from my favorite local butcher, which I won't go on about, but it's a concentrated beef stock and it is amazing. Now to that we'll add a little water. I have no idea how much water just yet because I got to get going and see what this is going to be like. Let's see how that turns out. Turn this heat back on. Again, only to a very, very low simmer because this now is going to simmer for about another hour. Okay, this just got even better, folks. I'd like to introduce my neighbors from down the dock, and this beautiful young woman is from France, and I think I already mentioned that she made the baguette for this afternoon, so I'm pretty excited about that. Is this, you've been making baguette all your life?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yes.
A big part of your cultural heritage is
Yep.
making baguette at your mother's knee when you
Every French person does that.
Exactly. Now the really neat thing about these guys is that the two of them are in France every couple of weeks, and they always seem to return with wine and cheese, making the French wine and cheese quality on this marina. So anyway, super excited about this. So glad you guys are here. Hope you can bear my French onion soup.
We call it onion soup.
Okay, now this is sacrilege, and I'm doing this right in front of the woman who baked this bread. French onion soup, or now that we're calling it just onion soup, would normally just have one thick slab of French bread plunked in the bowl and covered with cheese. You know, so you have that, you play that little dance with your fork where you're trying to cut into the piece of bread to get it, and...
See when you're talking.
Yeah, well you can have the end. Exactly, yeah, there you go. That's fun and that's traditional and I love that, but I actually prefer to make a big pile of croutons and like fill the bowl, heaping over, some soaking in, some staying up on top, some kind of crispy. So that's what we're going to do. I hope you all enjoy the plane flying over. I can tell you the two other people in this boat do. That'll get
Peter, you're slowly getting used to airplane noise.
Jeez, you do this all day, man, and you go, there's not many gaps. So I'm doing the pepper now.
Don't overdo the time.
Okay.
Because I'm not a fan of time.
Really?
I like it, but it's gotta be...
Would you have
So-
preferred rosemary in here? Because sometimes I do thyme, sometimes I do rosemary. Not a fan of thyme.
No, you can actually keep this one because I'm not using it. I
Really?
bought.
Well, did you buy rubbish thyme?
What? It's from England.
Oh!
I brought it from England.
Yeah. Okay, so the croutons are in the oven, drying out so they get crispy, and then we're going to butter fry them in garlic, of course. Okay. Okay, so I'm kind of hoping that those croutons are getting good and dry because I am going to start with some more butter in this pan, and we're going to butter fry these in with some butter, and I mean a lot of butter, and some garlic. Meanwhile, my two friends here are taking silly selfies with my iPad. Okay, this is a
I was gonna say, I thought
monster.
you brought an onion.
Yeah, no, this is a monster clove of garlic that I've already been into a little bit, but Geordie boy, there's Geordie. What do you think, bud?
We've had some. So
What do you think? Come on, come on, come on, you can do it. There's a boy. There's a boy. Okay, so we're going to see what we can do with this monster clove of garlic here. And I subscribe to the basically sliver it and crush it and just kind of make a mess. This is a lot of garlic. You guys in for a lot of garlic?
Oh, we're in for garlic.
Okay, all right, excellent. Glad to hear it. Because this is a lot of garlic. This
That is
is
a
more
big
like
garlic.
an apple than a garlic.
Well, that sure looked like mild garlic.
It's mild garlic. And we're using it all. I literally have never had anything in my life that had too much garlic in it. So let's hope that's still the case, because that's a lot of garlic. Okay. Okay, I think the croutons are nice and dry and crispy now. I have no idea if this is how you make croutons. This is how I've been making croutons all my life. Can you hear that? Nice and dry. Okay, so we'll just toss them in here because dry is not what I'm looking for. Garlicky and buttery is what I'm looking for. Dry is just kind of a side. This is croutons for 4, so they're going to be pretty deep. Okay, then these are coming along just about right. You can see they're getting nice and crispy, I can tell you. Oh, that's perfect. Okay, so now the cheese. Gruyere. Don't even think of anything else. No cheddar, no Monterey Jack, no anything like that. Gruyere. Grate it, make lots. Make more than you possibly think you could use. Here we go. Don't worry, you're not going to watch this. Okay, folks, I'm not really sure where I am right now because as the boat is filling up with people and there's more wine being drunk, I'm not even sure when the last time I talked to you was. But okay, so we have the broth and the soup is ready. The croutons are ready and they are seriously crunchy and garlicky. The bowls are ready and the cheese is grated and ready. So now it is the assembly stage. So basically nothing much to it. I imagine I'll do this in fast time. I'm going to pour and scoop without making too much of a mess. It's like I designed it! Perfect! Okay, we now have 4 bowls full of soup. Let's fill them with croutons. Oh god. Now some of these are going to sink and get soggy. Some of them are going to float and stay crispy. I just can't wait. And there is no way to put on too much cheese. So you're not going to believe, if I make a pile of cheese on here 2 inches tall, it's going to reduce down to 1/4 inch. So don't skimp. And you can see I'm not skimping here. Okay. That, folks, is about to go in the oven, and you can guess what it's going to look like when it comes out. Cheers! Oh, those look delicious. How about those broiling, sizzling away? All right, let's try those. Okay. And we're all set.
All right.
So now, this is a dinner engagement, so I'm going to say goodbye to you, and see you next week. And hello, welcome to Beer of the Week. Will you look at this spread just back from the Moss Street Market, which is Victoria's major farmers market. Everything you see in front of you, as well as the beer I'm about to show you, is local, Vancouver Island, and some of it hyper-local. And that includes the white IPA from 4 Mile Pub, which is literally 1.5 miles from here. Great little brew pub. Haven't tried this. This is really sounds interesting. It's called a strong dark IPA, but it's called white IPA. Interesting. Anyway, let's give this a go here. See how that pours. I wouldn't say that was dark. Maybe I misread that. It says strong, though. Oh, it's got a nice golden color to it. I'm joined again here today by the owner of MV Zephyrus. This is our post-cruise beer of the week. Back to real life here in Victoria. All right. I'm loving the smell of that. That smells really, really great. So, cheers. See what we think of. No, that's interesting.
Ooh, I like that.
That's a lot of beer. Wow. Didn't see that coming. I wouldn't have. Doesn't taste like an IPA to me. It's not really hoppy. It's just a rich, golden, very, very nice beer. Okay, so that is
Delicious.
white IPA, strangely described. That somehow gives me this image of light or something like that. It is a strong, full beer. Very good. Well, again, fantastic beer. I should take this opportunity to thank Brian Mebban, M-E-B-A-N, Mebban. Thank you very much for joining up on Patreon, and welcome aboard. And we need a special word of the week. Can you think of a special word of the week?
Olives.
Olives. When it's right under your nose, why wouldn't it be? So let's say olive or olives as this week's special word of the week. Put the word olive in comment down below, and you're in the running for a randomly selected person to win a Travels with Geordie t-shirt this week. Very good. Cheers. Thanks so much. See you next week.